But it is also the middle of the offseason for the NFL, and there are owners' meetings going on, coaches getting together. They're all hanging out. They're talking. They're taking pictures. And Dave Canales, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, spoke to the media today. And we have some audio we'll play for you, but they speak a bunch of different times, right? They speak at podiums. They speak to individual reporters. There was one quote that I saw from Joe Person, who covers the team, from Dave Canales that I want to break down a little bit. The question that was posed was essentially like, hey, the reports were that you were involved for the DK Metcalf sweepstakes. You didn't win it, but does that mean you are in need of a wide receiver one? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist. And Dave Canales basically said, no, we have a number one wide receiver, Xavier Legette. Xavier Legette was their first-round pick last year, number 32 overall. And that's taken a mind of its own, right? Fan base saying, "See, I told you the Xavier Legette can be this, that, and the other." And I'm not saying he can't, but what I am saying is, what did you want Dave Canales to say there? Yep, absolutely need a wide receiver one.
Yeah,
it's
our group stinks,
and then he's going to go walk into that locker room. By the way, maybe they don't in the draft or don't in free agency get a wide receiver one, and then walk in and just go like, we don't have the pieces we need. He also said, by the way, that Ike Ekwonu, they have their left tackle.
Yeah.
And if I were the owner of an NFL team, and I'm not, didn't make enough money, and every day the chances of me owning an NFL team get less and less. Not zero, though. But if I were the owner of an NFL team, I would guarantee, I would put it in the bylaws of my team that the head coach and the GM have to be two different people. I will never give someone head coach / GM duties.
Makes sense.
Because of what Dave Canales is doing there. Dave Canales should do nothing but hype up his players. Why? Because it takes confidence to be good in the NFL, and if your coach doesn't believe in you, you're not going to have an easy time believing in yourself. And he can do that as long as he is not the GM, whether he believes it or not. And I'm not saying he doesn't believe it. I'm not saying he doesn't think Xavier Legette can be the wide receiver one. But what you can't do is go, we have our wide receiver one, Xavier Legette, and then go be the person that pulls the trigger on trading for Brandon Ayuk 12 hours later.
Right.
What you can't do is be the person that says, we have our left tackle. There is no doubt in my mind Ike Ekwonu is that guy. And then go with the 8th pick, take the tackle from LSU. Like, you can't do that, right? So it almost opens you up to kind of be good cop, bad cop, where Dan Morgan gets to be the guy who, with his actions, says what he actually believes about the roster. And Dave Canales gets to be the guy who can be friends with the players, and friends is the wrong word, but can be always supportive of the players, which is how it should be because he interacts with the players a whole bunch more.
And Dave Canales, he talked with Kay Adams of Up and Adams, who's formerly of the NFL Network, does stuff with FanDuel Sports Network now. He told her about, hey, we're, asked him about adding a wide receiver and DK Metcalf because he has the familiarity and the relationship when Dave Canales was with Seattle. And he said, we had those conversations. Like, those conversations did take place about what it would take to possibly get him. So they are exploring. Mm-hmm. He did have those conversations. I think, Graham, we actually do have the clip from that.
We do. He just jumped in our headset here. So, Graham, go ahead and play the clip from Up and Adams.
There's some dynamic wide receivers out there. Bryce certainly will take advantage of that.
I look at this and I'm like, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions over his last 3 games. Like, I wish this season didn't end when it did, Yeah. You're one of those teams where I'm like, I wish that was the start, and now you have to pick up for there. I don't know how you do that, but I do think, adding like a Tyreek Hill, how quick did you text Dan Morgan about that?
Right. DK, we had the conversations, there were some interesting conversations that came up over the last couple of weeks. It's really tempting, but at the same time, like, we have to address, the needs on defense first. We're 32nd in the NFL on defense, and that's something where our focus has gone to make sure that we can, play good, balanced, complementary football.
And I mean, that's real, but also, by saying the Xavier Legette point and exploring those options, let's say they did get DK Metcalf. Let's say they do draft Teteroa McMillan with the 8th pick. Bragging about Xavier Legette and then bringing in another good wide receiver may do some of the hard work of like soothing things over with Xavier Legette before you need to, right? It's like, hey, man, I said you were number one, but now we have 2 number ones. Like, look at this.
Exactly.
Like it's
hey, you're our Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Dan Morgan is the one who, we're sitting here outside or inside the stadium at Durham Bulls Athletic Park, and I referenced earlier Moneyball, right, where Billy Beane, Brad Pitt, is explaining to Jonah Hill's character, like, you might have to cut these guys, right? Like, don't become friends with them. Like, you got to treat them, you might have to cut them. You might have to trade them. They're going to talk about how, what do you mean? My kids, they just started school and now you're sending me somewhere else. It's like, yeah, that's what your job is. The GM has to do that. The coach has to be in the locker room with him every single day.
Yep.
And Dave Canales appears to be a guy who the players really like playing for. And that's why I'm saying take everything a coach who's not the GM says with a grain of salt, because there's a bad cop he can blame, right? Mm-hmm. Xavier Legette's our wide receiver 1. Then you draft McMillan. Then you trade for Ayuk. Then you do something else. And the coach gets to go, well, I mean, that was upstairs. That was them. That wasn't me. And you get to keep those relationships. But since he's here, now we have 2 wide receiver 1s. You're still a huge part of the offense. And you get to keep those personalities in check a little bit. And Dave Canales is going to learn more and more and more about being a head coach, and that was part of what he spoke today at the owners' meetings as well. He joined NFL on ESPN and talked about the difference this year for him as a head coach versus last year as a rookie.
It just feels like we have a lot more of our processes in place in terms of like playbook stuff, scheme-wise, offensively. Was bringing in a new thing, and then Dan Morgan and I just kind of working through our processes from free agency to draft prep, those types of things. First time in 2 years that Brad Idzik and I have been able to do a full offensive self-scout. To sit down with the staff, watch all the run game, like the way that we kind of know how to do it and process it. So that's great, just wrapping our brain around that.
I wish, as a fly on the wall, I could be there to watch Brad Idzik, who's the offensive coordinator, for those that don't know, and Dave Canales self-scout the Panthers offense. Because, I mean, we all watched it, right? There was the switch that flipped in the middle of the season. There was a bad offense that became a pretty good offense, or at least a opportunistic offense. Still, some stats say they weren't maybe as good as it appeared, but they scored enough to be in the game against the Eagles, the Chiefs, so like all of these very, very good teams. And I wish that self-scout where they go like, man, why didn't we see this earlier? Like, what was the difference? And again, Canales speaking with ESPN on what went into Bryce Young's turnaround last year. So they self-scouted, and this is part of what they learned.
Yeah, it was really just like, I talk about Bryce all the time and just say, like, this is a guy that was handed a very challenging situation by being benched early on, and he just went to work. He just came every day, went right back to work. He'd never stopped leading. He connected with his teammates. He was there, hell or high water, good game, bad game, whatever it was. He was right there at the front, greeting guys, encouraging guys, supporting Andy, and at the same time, just like processing. And we were having conversations about concepts, about different things, because we had to just keep those conversations alive for when that time would be where you go back in, you're ready to rock.
First of all, that's all great coach speak, right? And give Bryce Young credit for staying engaged post benching. There's one thing that I would quibble with.
What's that?
Tough situation was handed to him. He had something to do with the benching. It's not like the benching isn't like, getting hit by a bus when you're walking down the sidewalk, like where you're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen to you. You are part of the process, right? It may have been the coach's decision to bench him, but his play had a lot to do with that, right? It didn't just occur.
Yeah, he gave the coach's reason to. Yeah. Hey, I gave him because of his level of play.
Yeah, exactly.
We all saw it.
So like the change, it wasn't just, and by the way, like, again, credit to him for staying engaged. And if they truly were discussing concepts and everything else as he was not the starter and Andy Dalton had taken over, that definitely had something to do with why he played so well once he regained the starting job. But there was also, like, there's something tangibly different about Bryce Young pre-benching and post-benching. I think more so than just like, he had more time in the playbook. There was a confidence about him. There was a willingness to pull the trigger on throws that we just didn't see the end of his rookie year and into the beginning of his second year. And that to me was the difference. Last clip here that we'll play for you from Dave Canales, the head coach of the Panthers, on the secret to making a quarterback's life easier. Because if we're real, it looked a lot easier in the second half of the year than it did at the beginning. Here's that audio.
There's a give and take where I think that what can happen as a coach is if you're asking more than you're involving, then it becomes very one-sided, and I think that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect. So it all comes down to respect, and I think that trust factor goes both ways. It's asking the player to trust you while the stuff's got to work.
Yep.
And when it does work, then you earn their trust, and then vice versa. You can kind of work off of building that relationship. It's really critical, and these guys are so smart and they've been so good for so long. Also, part of it is just reminding them how good they are, reminding them that you've been a baller. Yeah. You've been amazing your whole life. It'll be no different. Let's just get these basic things in order so you can go out there and be who you've always been. And I think that's been what's refreshing for the guys that I've coached, is they're able to say, okay, he really just wants me to get back to me, and that's really what I want, ultimately. So,
do you know what is probably I don't want to say was, for me, one of the most difficult things evaluating Bryce Young pre-draft, and Dennis, I'm a draft nerd who likes to pretend I'm a GM.
Yes, you are.
How he would respond to adversity. Mm-hmm. I've told this story before. There's a quote that I'll never forget. Do you remember JT Daniels, another USC quarterback?
Oh yeah.
He reclassified up. So what should have been his senior year of high school, he started for USC, Southern Cal.
Kind of like Cooper Flack.
And played very well early on and ended up getting hurt. But when he was playing very well early on, I remember there was a quote from his dad that said, he's never failed at anything. And it was he was the best in school. He was 4.0, and he was the best athlete in every sport he's ever played. And his dad was kind of saying it matter-of-factly. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with acknowledging if it's truth. But I went, goodness gracious, how is this guy going to respond when he does fail? Because playing quarterback at USC, you're going to throw interceptions. You're going to lose games. You're going to get hurt, which is what ended up happening. And he ended up being a 7 or 8 year college player, a whole bunch of medical red shirts, and didn't make it to the NFL. But Bryce Young was kind of that dude. He got his first college scholarship offer in 7th grade from Cliff Kingsbury at Texas Tech. Yeah. He was the number 1 recruit in the class beginning at 15 years old. He won state championships. He broke records at a high school that had a long list of former NFL quarterbacks that went there. He goes to Alabama where he wins a national championship as a backup, takes over first season, Heisman Trophy winner. Next season, number 1 overall pick. And I'm going how is this dude going to react to a little bit of adversity? You read some of the stories. It's he was the best point guard and all these other things. He dealt with some real adversity his rookie year in the beginning of his sophomore year, second year in the league. Came out on the other side playing well. That tells me a lot about his makeup, and it makes me more optimistic about his NFL career than I was at any point in time before that. And you heard some of that from Dave Canales.
You could notice, I know we got to hit a break, but you could notice just the level of joy that he was playing with. And I think that's maybe something sitting back that he maybe rediscovered. But it's a real thing.
It's the Disney movie thing. Go play pickup and remember why you loved this game as a kid.
It's D2 Mighty Ducks. Go play street hockey, and then go to Iceland. But that's where that I think is honestly where we saw there's the Bryce swagger. Mm-hmm. People always mention that, there's the Bryce Young swagger. There it is. And that was something that we noticed when he came back in and started playing a little bit more there's the Bryce Young we saw at Alabama.
And maybe even more free than you saw at Alabama. Maybe Sabinified.
Yeah.
If that's a term. He the one everyone's going to point to is he released the pass, knew it was going to be caught, knew it was going to be a touchdown before it was caught, turned around, put his hands up like he's Steph Curry.
Against Atlanta at the end of the year against Tommy Tremble.
And everybody goes, haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
And it's very much that's Bryce Young when he's feeling it. So we'll see if he's feeling it coming out of this year. But I do think, his response to adversity, maybe for the first time in his athletic career, is a very, very good indicator of his potential moving forward.